Ethan Carter, a 36-year-old wildlife documentary cameraman, was driving back to his remote camp after finishing an early morning shoot on the wide African savanna. The sun had just begun to rise, turning the endless grasslands into waves of gold. It had been a routine day of filming animals in their natural habitat. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic. As his Jeep rolled slowly along the dusty road, something small and pale suddenly darted into his path. Ethan slammed on the brakes and the tires skidded across the red dirt, sending clouds of dust swirling into the air. The vehicle stopped only a couple of meters away from a tiny white lion cub standing in the road. What surprised Ethan most wasn't the cub's rare coloring, it was the way it behaved. Instead of running away from the human and the vehicle, the cub stared directly at him and cried out in a desperate, almost pleading voice. Ethan stepped out of the Jeep and waved his arms, trying to scare the cub back into the grass. But the little animal ran toward him instead, rising on its hind legs and placing its small paws against his knee while crying even louder. In that moment, Ethan understood something was terribly wrong. Lion cubs that young were never alone. Their mothers stayed close, especially in dangerous territory. Yet here this one was, standing in the middle of the road and practically begging a human for help. Ethan nodded instinctively, as if making a silent promise. The cub turned around and began running across the savanna, stopping every few steps to look back as if asking him to follow. Grabbing his equipment bag, Ethan hurried after it. They crossed tall grass and past scattered acacia trees under the blazing sun. Nearly half an hour later, the cub's confident pace began to falter. It circled the same rocks repeatedly and sniffed the ground, whining softly. The little creature had lost the trail. Ethan knelt down and carefully examined the dirt. Years of experience tracking wildlife helped him notice faint paw prints, those of an adult lioness. The tracks led north. Ethan started walking in that direction, and the cub followed close behind like a tiny partner on a mission. Hours later they reached a rushing river swollen by recent rains. Crocodiles floated on the surface like dark logs. Going around would take far too long, and Ethan feared the lioness might not survive that delay. Thinking quickly, he soaked some dried meat from his pack and wrapped it in a cloth with stones inside. He hurled the bundle far downstream. The splash and scent drew the crocodiles away, and Ethan seized the moment. Holding the cub tightly to his chest, he stepped into the cold rushing water and fought the current until he finally reached the other side. Exhaustion soon caught up with the cub. Its legs trembled and it collapsed from hunger and dehydration. Ethan spotted vultures circling nearby and followed them until he found the carcass of a buffalo. Using a flare to scare the birds away, he allowed the cub to eat enough to regain its strength. Revived, the pair continued their search. Soon they encountered a group of rhinoceroses that almost charged them, but a young calf stepped forward and blocked the herd, giving Ethan time to escape with the cub. Eventually they reached a deep pit hidden near thorn bushes, a poacher's trap. At the bottom lay an albino lioness, weak and barely breathing. Ethan radioed for help, tied a rope to a tree, and climbed down to give the exhausted animal water. While he worked, he noticed a dangerous scorpion creeping toward her paw and quickly killed it with his small axe. Just when it seemed things might finally calm down, a pack of hyenas appeared at the edge of the pit, drawn by the scent of the trapped lioness. Ethan climbed out to defend the cub, but he had little to protect himself with, only flares and a small shovel. The hyenas circled closer and closer. In a desperate attempt, he struck what he thought was their leader, but another scar-faced hyena stepped forward, proving it was the true pack leader. With nowhere left to run, Ethan shielded the cub behind him. Suddenly the tiny lion charged the hyena and bit its nose, buying precious seconds. Just as the pack prepared to attack, rescue jeeps roared over the hill with blaring horns and bright lights. The startled hyenas scattered into the darkness. The rescue team pulled the weakened lioness from the pit and treated both mother and cub before transporting them to a rehabilitation center. Over the following weeks, Ethan visited often, forming a quiet bond with the animals he had helped save. When the day finally came to release them back into the wild, he opened the cage door and watched them step into the open grasslands once more. The lioness approached him briefly and touched her forehead to his chest, while the cub looked back several times before disappearing with its mother into the endless savanna. Ethan stood there long after they were gone, grateful for the unforgettable journey they had shared. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories from the wild.